Hi, I'm Laneth with Counted Quilts, and we just want to thank you for buying one of our patterns. And this video we are making to answer any questions that may arise as you put this little puppy together. The method is the same for all of our quilts. It is called the strip method. These quilts are sewn, not appliqued, but they go together easily, and I will take you step by step through the process so that you can see how quickly and easily they go together. Let's start by looking at the pattern. Notice that there's yardage for 3 different sizes. On the first page, right under the yardage that is given again, is your step number 1, which is a table. This pattern requires 2 sizes of strips, a 3.5 and a 2. It tells you how many strips for each color of fabric you need to cut. Quick tip for those that are brand new at quilting: when you cut, you want to make sure you have square. You want to make sure this edge is on a straight line and this edge is on a straight line so that you're not cutting askew. I now have my strips cut, my 2-inch strips and my 3.5-inch strips, and I'm going to cut them into pieces and label them with the different letters. These are my letters that I use to label my pieces. I put them on top of the pieces. I cut them so that I keep them from getting confused. At the bottom of each one of these, I write the size. This is just something I do, a hint, so that if a piece gets lost, I know what it is. If it falls out of the stack, I can measure it and immediately I know what it is. I'm going to start with my 3.5-inch size strips, the yellow one. And I'm going to start with the largest size, 29T, and work my way this way. So you cut the biggest ones first to the smallest ones. These I will label T and set them aside. Cut my S1 at 23 inches and set it aside. 2 R's, 1 Q, 1 P, O's, N's, M's, L's, K's, J's, B's, G, E, D's, C, A. You've now completed step 2, and that's using the yellow and the red chart. You now have them in their individual size, labeled with their individual letters. Before we start assembling the letter pieces into the picture of the dog, we need to mark our B squares and our A squares with diagonals. I'm using a white quilt pencil here, and you draw diagonal lines on your A's from one point to the other. Make sure you have a straight line from tip to tip, and you mark all of the colors that you cut for A. These are the B triangle pieces. After you finish the A's, you mark the B's. Make sure you draw on the wrong side. We're drawing these lines on the wrong side of the fabric. Now we have all of our A's and our B's with diagonal lines in them, and we're ready to go to the map. When you sew, it's important that you use a true 1/4 inch. Check it before you begin. Me, I mark my 1/4 inch with a piece of green tape, so I know that I'm sewing down a true 1/4 inch seam, so everything will line up. This is what I call the map. It is how we put the pieces together to make the dog. It is the 3rd page of your pattern. I usually begin by numbering the strips so I can refer to them and I know where I am. I usually start on the right and work to the left. There are 12 strips on this dog. We're going to start with strip number 1, and I'm going to start with the D's here in the middle. Okay, so now I'm going to take my green one, which is this one, and I'm going to take the blue over A overlap, and I'm going to put it on the corner so that it opens up this way, because that's what I want to create, that piece right there. And I'm going to make sure I have edge to edge, and I am going to pin it in place. and then sew down the diagonal line. Sew down the diagonal line. There's my blue and there's my green. I have sewn down the 2 diagonal lines that I drew. I'm going to press them back, trim off the excess at about 1/4 inch. Both of these. Then we're going to press the seams open. This is how you do a triangle overlay. So now we have a piece that has a little green on the corner, and a green one that has a blue on the corner. Sometimes when you're sewing these overlays and you flip them, they don't come up to the edge like they should. Unpick it, turn it around, and sew it again, and that usually lines it up. It's always good before you cut them to check the map and make sure you've sewn them on in the right place before you cut, so that you don't go and end up short of cloth. I always double check before I cut. And you notice you have these diagonal lines. I found the easiest way to get those to match up is to cut a 1/4 inch strip of paper like this, and to lay it, put this over because it's going to go on this way, lay it on top and put your pin in the seam line right where it will go at 1/4 inch. Then take your 1/4 inch piece and put it on top of the other one. You're going to sew it too and go in the seam right at 1/4 inch. When you bring those up, they should be edge to edge, but you'll have the seam line where it's going to touch at 1/4 inch. And then pin it in place. This is how I put my strips together. I look at the map, pull up the pieces, lay them down so I know how they go together. First thing I do is I sew the triangle overlaps and those pieces together, and then I will sew the T to the O. There you have it, strip number 1 all sewn together. Lay out strip number 2 with the letter pieces that you've cut. First thing to do is sew the triangle overlaps and press them open, and then sew the pieces together. We will sew strip number 2 when it's done to strip number 1, and then we will just continue making our dog quilt by the same process. Pieces, overlays, sew them together, and join the strips together. Iron all of your seams open, and when sewing your seams together, back tack at all the ends of your seams. There he is! We are now going to add the smile and the toes to our puppy using a product called Heat and Bond and black ribbon. We need to cut the Heat and Bond paper into 1/8 inch strips. Not very big. About 2 of these makes a yard. You need a yard. Pin your 1/8 inch ribbon to your ironing board. Take your 1/8 inch Heat and Bond paper strip, glue side down. You're going to attach it to the ribbon. You're using a hot iron. Overlap your second piece and continue to add it to the ribbon. Take the ribbon and peel off the paper. You'll see the glue on the ribbon. Cut a 3-inch piece and lay it on the seam line right under the nose and pin it in place. And taking your hot iron, carefully tack it down. Cut a piece of black ribbon that is 6 inches long, lay it on top of the ribbon that came down from the nose. It should go from seam line to seam line and cover this piece of ribbon. Pin it in place. Measure 2 pieces of black ribbon that are 2 1/4 inches long, and you're going to pin one on each side underneath the long one. Take your hot iron and tack the ribbon down. Make sure when you pin it down you have glue side down, shiny glue side down against the fabric. When you quilt him, make sure that you sew right down the center of this ribbon with dark black thread, so it's on there forever. At the bottom of the ball, take a pin and pin your black ribbon in, go all the way to the edge. You're going right down that seam line, down to the edge, and snip. Pin that in place and we'll iron it down. After you have the centerpiece on, you need to cut 6 pieces of ribbon that are 2 3/4 inches long. Then you start from the center and you go out 2 inches and pin one on, and then 2 inches and pin the next, and the last one's on the seam line. When you have them all pinned in place, then take your iron and tack them down. There he is, he's done, our adorable puppy quilt top. I said that the pattern comes in 3 different sizes. The number of pieces are the same, and the letter designation are the same, and the map is the same. The only thing that changes when you want to make one of the other sizes is the size of the piece and the length of the strips. So this is what you do. If you decide to make the fun quilt, which is larger than the crib and is on page 5, then you would cut your strips according to this box. Notice they are 4.5 and 2.5, whereas the ones we used for the crib were 3.5 and 2. Thus the size of the strips are bigger. The second change that you make is the length of the pieces. On page 5 there is a yellow strip that shows you the changes that need to be made for the play quilt. You take that paper, fold it under the yellow piece, lay it on top of the yellow piece for the one we were using for the crib, and paper clip it in place. Here is the difference in the 2 sizes. You're cutting strips that are larger, 4.5 and 2.5, and you are cutting pieces that are larger. The only thing that has changed in making this quilt is the size of the pieces. The map is the same, the letter designation is the same, and the number of pieces are the same. Do the same thing with the 2.5 strip designation. Put it over the 2-inch strip box and go ahead and cut your strips. There he is, all done, our adorable puppy quilt top. If you are interested in seeing other adorable easy quilt patterns, go to countedquilts.com.